overflowing out the top of the manhole.
One of the things I wanted to mention, right here in the I&I priorities, the top line, the overall camera inspection of wastewater system, $100,000. This has been talked about at great length by the Board of Aldermen in recent months. The phase 2 projects, in large part, a number of those projects will come as a result of what we find by cameraing our system. We'll find, where the I&I's leaking into the system, where there's pipes that are crushed or damaged or have roots in them, or whatever the situation may be that needs to be replaced. In this town we have a lot of pipes that go from big sizes to small sizes to big sizes. We've got situations where it's much like clogging of the arteries. We haven't really done a very good job, I think, in maintaining the system in certain areas, water and wastewater. So where you might have, when it was put in, had a pipe that was 8 inches or whatever, it may be 6 or 4 inches today, based on all the contaminants that adhere to the pipe wall. So we'll have to find that out by cameraing the entire system. We have about 13 miles of line throughout the city to run cameras through, and to get a good idea of what our underground systems look like, how they connect to each other. And in some areas of town, we've had significant problems with sewer backing up into people's basements. Those will be items that we could identify by running these cameras through there. And so when we talk about those phase 2 projects, a lot of those will be dictated, I think, by the council as to, we'll understand the priorities a little bit better once we camera the system. So.
I have a question. Now the $100,000 for that camera inspection, that's for a service for a camera inspection professional to run their cameras on all 13.
We have talked about with the Board of Aldermen buying a sewer camera.
Yeah, would you expand on that?
However, in looking at this, there is significant concern that our staff wouldn't have the time to do that and get it done in an appropriate amount of time with all the other tasks that we've got. So to have a service that does that for a living come out here and do that, they can do it in a much quicker amount of time. We can have that system outlined and mapped out and identified where all the problem areas are. It would be a lot quicker. Yeah, it's a little bit more, but at the end of the day, we don't have to maintain a camera that may break down the road, and we don't have to worry about having people available that would need to be trained. There's other costs associated with owning the camera and those kind of things. So this was seemingly a better idea. We can get it done quicker, and that would help identify the next phase, after phase 1, of course, where we need to go.
And didn't your engineers recommend not buying a camera?
Yes.
As it being more cost effective to use it?
Yes. We've had those discussions recently. So. You need to ask one about this stuff.
It's about, we have an online question.
Okay.
It's about when were the sewer lines last cambered?
Do you know when the sewer lines were last cambered, Paul?
We've never cambered all of them. We've just cambered some of them.
Do you know when the last time we did that is?
Well, we attempted to camera some of them just a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
And our camera blew up, so, again.
But before that, years, month, week, I know it hasn't been since I've been here.
Well, we had some, let's see, they cambered the interceptors just in 2009, I think, or 2008. We cambered the interceptors as part of our I&I plan.
So basically 2008 was the last time.
Then Larkin reviewed those. So
And were there any problems?
the whole system's never been cambered. And this is what we've got to do, is camera the whole system.
Yeah, it was only the newer part of the system that was done, so there's probably very little problems found, I would think. Right. Yeah, there weren't, since it was newer. We need to look at the old part, we've got some significant areas that we know are problem areas, or we suspect are problem areas, but in order to determine that, we've got to be able to run cameras through, so. Okay. Okay, well.
Just another question. I want to make sure I got this right. For future plans, were we talking 3 different plants?
Really, you're gonna get down to 2. You'll get down to 2 plants, when the new northwest plant is built. The southwest plant will just become a pumping station, then we'll pump to the north.
Okay, so your intention then is to route what's going from there
Yes.
over to there. And then, you know, the obvious question, cost to route everything out to the one plant and increase capacity?
To route everything to the southeast plant, yeah, that was in the engineering report, and it was, I don't recall the exact numbers, it was a lot of money to get the big lines all the way across town and pumping stations to get it over the hill.
So are you saying that it exceeds what you're talking about now?
Yes.
That is including additional staff and everything, right?
That's correct. If you want to go over the report sometime, I can.
It's not that I doubt you, what I'm asking for is clarification.
Yes.
So, all right, that's one thing I'm trying to look ahead as far as additional expense.
It's a lot of capital improvement. There's a lot of infrastructure to get from the west side of town to the east. You end up building some big lines for long ways and pumping stations in areas that don't have development.
$8 million worth?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna move right on. Is there another question back here?
Yeah, has there been any push to put smaller toilets in, 1.5 gallon flush toilets, or smoke in the, to find out if the gutters and downspouts are hooked into the sewers? Has there been any push on that in the city to relieve the pressure off of these sewer lines?
Yeah, it's common to do smoke testing as well as TV inspection, and in a lot of cases there'll be actual site visits to each house. That takes somebody going in and seeing if the sump pumps are connected to the sewer. Some communities have done that. It's quite a process. I've lived in 2 different houses and have had inspectors come in and chart out where my sump pumps went to make sure they weren't going to the sewer.
What about toilets and stuff for all the new construction over the past years? Is that something that commercial and residential that they put 1.5 gallon flush toilets in there? Is that part of the requirement of new construction?
That doesn't make as much difference if your pipes, you know, the pipes are cracked and the joints are open and it rains, the groundwater goes into the sewer. That's what happens.
So if you got a 3.5 gallon flush toilet versus a 1.5 gallon flush toilet times 100 or 1,000 toilets.
Right.
Over a period of a year, then all that ends up going to the sewer treatment plant.
It's
Which
not,
ends up over capacity that ends up causing this whole problem.
on average days, we're not talking about an average day problem. We're talking about when the weather is wet, it's when the facilities get under stress. When it gets wet outside, when you're walking in water, when you walk to your car,
I
the
think
sewers are full.
I think you're talking about apples and oranges, though. He's kind of talking about a wet weather flush of water that's coming through, goes on the side, and we have to treat. But you are talking about a valid concern that would cut down your average treatment cost every year for the city and bring your operational costs down. And yes, that would be an ordinance change, and it would be a building standard change that the city could talk about and adopt, and it would help your cost. But it's a little different than what we're talking about, where we're talking about wet weather issues of the sewers being overcharged with too much groundwater. So you have a valid point, but it's just a little bit of apples and
Rough
oranges.
year last year for that.
What's that?
Rough year last
Yeah,
year.
it was. It was.
One other question, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah.
A moment ago, you said that inspectors have been coming into your home looking for sump pumps. Is that,
Yes.
is that when you purchased your home? Or
No, this is when I lived in Kansas City. They did the city was having a study done, and they went into every house. When I moved across the state line into Kansas, the same thing happened when they did I lived on a sewer system that the regional sewer district was gonna take over, so they decided they would have everything inspected. So they came into my house by appointment, you know.
And I had the same thing, except I didn't even have a sump pump pit in my house. My foundation drains actually tied right into my sewers.
Right.
And they came in and had to jackhammer my basement floor out and put a sump pump in for me and then have that pump back out into the yard. And I had to pay for that.
Well, and I agree with that. As a matter of fact, 12 years ago when I bought a rental property, the person that sold it to me, the sewer was collapsed. Had a plumber come over, that was before we were having any type of inspections inside. Came over, saw that the sump pump was feeding into the wastewater. We immediately, by code, we end up running down. What I'm wanting to find out, and the reason why I asked you the question, is that I wanted to see if that's something that we can institute here. How did you feel about that?
I thought it was totally appropriate because it's the right thing to do. It's such a volume of water that should be in your sewers that needs to go back onto the surface of the ground and let it infiltrate into the green areas because it's clean water. And I believe that it is appropriate not to have those. The sanitary sewers is such small diameter compared to the surface flow pipes that we need. And so I felt it was entirely appropriate. And new houses need to be designed and built that way.
Okay. And there's one more question.
We have discussed that before, David, at another board meeting.
Yeah.
We have actually discussed doing smoke tests and going in and
Well, I
checking.
understand the smoke test.
As well as going and following up on the sump pumps.
Have we determined if we're going to do that?
There was not a determination, but that was previously discussed.
I
So
think one of the determinations we discussed was to make sure that the city has their problems fixed before we worry about the citizens.
Well, and I agree with that. We can do that with the camera. But if it's I&I being caused by, which wouldn't surprise me at all, because we weren't doing a lot of inspections that we're talking about now. We didn't have a city inspector many years ago. So a lot of the properties possibly would be doing this. Now, based upon, let's say we get I&I down to an acceptable level, whatever that is. Right now, I assume what we're doing is we're saying that the facility that we're concerned about not being able to treat the amount of water is because of the amount of I&I. If, I assume we have some sort of formula that we should be able to anticipate based upon the amount of customers that are connected to that plant, how much water should be flowing through that plant monthly, is that correct?
Yeah.
And right now, based upon that number, how much percentage-wise are we out of whack?
All right. Your wastewater system is supposed to be a closed system, right?
Correct.
Okay.
It's Paul. Here you go. You get the mic, Paul.
Your wastewater system is supposed to be an enclosed system. In other words, no other water is supposed to enter it other than what comes out of your tap. We treat roughly 500,000 gallons a day. Then that is divided up with about 75 to 80% should be going to your southeast lagoon. That leaves the other 20% to be split. Part of it will go to the northwest and part of it goes to the southwest. You treat, at several days, you'll treat well over 1 million gallons a day just going to the southeast plant. My point is 500,000 split 3 ways. And both of them exceed those levels.
So based upon the
If you
amount
got
of
your, if you got your I&I under control, which you'll never get it totally
Correct, I
done away
understand.
with. But for all intents and practical purposes, if you get 500,000 and take 80% of that, that's how much flow should be going to the southeast lagoon.
Okay,
And that's all you only have to do.
and on a non-rainy day, we're seeing 500,000.
On a normal day,
Just on a normal
that's what
day.
it should be. But see, the other thing is if water can enter, Water can exit.
I know, I guess what I'm trying to get to is that based upon water usage, that's what we're looking at.
Roughly about 400,000 gallons a day should be going to the southeast.
And we're exceeding that by 25% on a regular
Every bit
day.
of it.
And then on a day that it may be raining and infiltrating further into the system, we're exceeding it by
Oh,
200%.
probably even more than that. Probably even more than that at times. But it doesn't run through the plant, it goes over into your stormwater detention basin.
But you end up treating it sooner or later, right?
But you have to treat it.
What, and that's what I mean, you know, is either way, where it goes initially, I don't care, I know where it's going to go. It's going to go through the plant. We're going to provide chemicals to treat it. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, we're gonna move along, and Chief Campbell will give us a little presentation.
Okay, I'm gonna talk about the water flow and pressures and volumes and how it deals to protecting our properties from fire in our city. We don't have to go back far to December 10th of this 2010 and realize that the ones that didn't hear, this house, for example, insufficient water was there to extinguish this house without having to go several blocks to haul it to the location. Alright, people are going to say, well, it's a dead-end main, you should have known better. Yes, it is a dead-end main. But that was 2010, people. Dead-end water mains should be a thing of the past on 2-inch water lines. We had to literally haul water from 2 blocks away in trucks to get to this. Would we have saved the house if the hydrant had water? No, we wouldn't. But what about the neighbor's house that was just to the west of it, or anywhere else if there had been a wind forcing it behind this fire? Would we have been able to save it? No. Because there is a time process of having to haul water. That's the advantage of living in town and having fire hydrants in your yards.
My understanding, there's a fire hydrant in the front yard of this house.
Yes, right directly, probably 50 feet out from the front door. Well, right along the street, there was a fire hydrant. But it was insignificant in the effect of fighting this fire. It wouldn't even fill the hose. Where that takes us to, not only is this location the issue, but there's several other places in this city that are in the same situation. Some of them probably even worse, because there's more homes, more populated, and closer together, and more apt that you're going to lose more than one if one would be involved. So where does it take us to if we don't have the water to be able to suppress fires when they happen? Takes us to the ISO grading scale, which ISO is Insurance Services Office, and that's what everybody's homeowner's insurance is rated on. It's where the insurance agents, insurance companies get their rating for fire protection from ISO. Odessa's been the last 2 times that Odessa's been graded. It was 96. April 95, the top one, and April 2003 on the bottom. Water supply makes up 40% of the ISO rating figures. As you can see in the 96 survey, the water supply made up 17.01% of the 40. That's the credit we got for water distribution. 2003, it went to 17.04. That's all it changed. 0.3 difference in percent is all it made in that time period. It's very little improvement. 96 was the new treatment plant, the new water tower. 2003, there wasn't any substantial improvements to the water system. It all comes into play. I mean, everything has to increase. The fire department's qualifications and everything has to increase. As you see, there was increase in everything The least amount of increase was in the water supply and distribution, with 3/10. So what does it mean to us as homeowners? We're gonna pay more in insurance, and it's not gonna change. We can do whatever we wanna do at the fire district. We can house it 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If we don't have the water, they're not gonna grant us a better rating. As simple as that. This is a flow chart from the 13 locations that in '96 where they tested hydrants for the rating survey. Out of 13 sites that they tested, 3 that are highlighted, only 3 of them met the needed flow amount for that location. The flow amount is determined by the square footage of the building or buildings that are there to be protected. Is how they arrive at that. So for example, 2nd and Cobb, 2nd and East Main, Cobb Street right there by Redden Service Station. Everybody knows where it's at. It's Cobb Avenue, if you didn't know it, not East Main. That area right there, the needed flow is 3,500 gallons per minute. In 1996, the available amount of flow, gallon per minute, was 1,000. That's it. That's all. You're downtown. 2nd and Mason, 4-way stop. 3,500 needed, 750 gallons per minute. That's protecting your downtown. Like I said, you had three sites that met or exceeded the required amount of flow in them areas. 2003, they tested 9 locations. At that time, we had the outlet mall. And guess what? That's where the flow met the requirement. That's where the new improvements have been done. Anywhere else on the site, they did not meet or getting close to the needed flow for that would be needed in the event of a fire. And we're just not talking, commercial downtown. This is all over town. You may be in your house. To be able to say that you got a hydrant on your front yard, no, that's going to be sufficient to extinguish the fire at your home. That's honest truth. And I'm not saying that to scare you, because some of them are okay. Paul's group, they've made some improvements, but there's a long ways to go. There's tremendous amount of progress that needs to be made to be able to get us to the point where we're going to pay less expensive insurance rates in this town. And we're fortunate probably where we're at now, because there is a possibility that if we invite them back in and do a survey, that instead of coming down, we will go up. And it makes a tremendous amount of difference in that. We may have to pay more in utilities, but we save them insurance. And the insurance companies they're looking for it, not to pick on the insurance guys, but they're looking for it because they're in the business to make money as well. And they're checking this stuff. I've had more calls in the last year and this year on reviewing insurance, the ISO ratings for the area than I've ever had. Because they're checking it, they're reviewing all this. They're trying to make sure that they're up on top of the game and getting everything for their buck. And so, don't bet that just because you got a fire hydrant in your front yard that it's going to be sufficient for your fire, if you should have one, and hopefully it never will. Any questions? It's kind of quick.
Do they have a regular routine flushing these fire hydrants and dead end?
Water department, Paul and the water department take care of all the flushing. We usually do a yearly check of the hydrants as long as
I used to see them flushing quite a bit.
Yeah.
I haven't seen much lately.
A lot of times you'll see a lot of the flushing at the dead end locations. Because you got to flush there because you don't have no continuous flow. So you'll see more flushing at dead end locations than you will on the looped areas. But they will flush periodically and throughout the year. And they also do inspections and be sure that the hydrants are operating properly, at least as far as opening and closing. They can't change much in the flow. The pipe's not there. The big thing on that, and they talked about this with the sewer lines, not only is there buildup in them sewer lines, but the buildup that's in the water distribution lines is remarkable. The calcium buildup, it may be an 8-inch main when it was put in the 30s, but I bet you now you'd be lucky if it's 6. So what's happened, you know, as the line got smaller for the water volume that's able to pass through it, but also we've extended onto it. You know, we've added to, the city's grown tremendously, and we really haven't changed our water distribution system at all, with the exception of going west out towards the mall. Any other questions?
If you had two fires in town simultaneously,
One fire. We're one town fire. That's it.
Is there any way that they could run all the fuel lines to
You'd have to ask the water guys. I doubt it. But one fire at a time is all we're gonna be able to handle. And the size of the water delivery into the trucks, there's very few places in town that we can even run the trucks at full capacity if we needed to do that. Because there's just not enough water to be able to be brought into them to run them at full capacity. Any other questions?
You could have a serious problem in the downtown business area too, with the water pressure being so low that if one building caught on fire as close as they are,
This
can travel quick.
downtown, the last downtown fire was 97. Anybody's been around, they remember, laundromat. That fire, the water basically stopped flowing in Centennial Hills after we were into that fire long enough. Because we were pulling so hard with the trucks that the town couldn't keep up. And that's a long ways away from that location of that fire downtown. We hauled water to that downtown fire. Where did we get that water? We went to the outlet mall, because the outlet mall is totally separate from anything else in town. It doesn't affect any place else. So we traveled clear to the outlet mall to bring in water. When the Kitco plant burnt, same thing. Same thing.
So you're saying since 1996, the city has known that there was a problem with the fire main, and firefighting capability, and did they not address it at that time? There
has been, 96 and beyond, I can show you stuff that way back in before any of us even existed. This has been an issue. Not, the problem in 96, not saying there's a problem, yes, but as the town and the community growed, it has just gotten worse because we haven't built our infrastructure, we haven't kept it up, haven't maintained it. So now we're even further in more damage now than what we were then, because we haven't. All we did was grow. We've added on. We've stretched it, and so without bringing in new distribution, updating the existing distribution, closing up dead end lines and mains, we haven't gained. We haven't helped ourselves.
That's what I'm saying. Basically, since 1996, the city ignored.
Domestic use. Just think about this. The number of houses that, when population of this town went from 1,000, we'll say to almost 5,000. Just think about the domestic use. How much more water that's taken out of the system, let alone what's dealing with fire.
one of the things that have been done though is we've increased, especially with new construction, that the number of loops that we actually have done. We got rid of a lot of numbers of dead end sites.
With planning and zoning and different things, the main requirements for housing additions has changed. Dead-end mains are no longer allowed. At this point in time, there is some housing additions that are not completed that do have dead-end mains. And so that we have made some improvement, but the problem that still exists there is the water getting to the housing addition is still coming through the same water distribution main coming off the hill. So we haven't fixed that. And that's one of our bigger issues besides just having dead end, non-loop water mains. Anybody else? David.
Actually, not for you, but for Mr. Thompson again. Question was asked just a little bit earlier, and it was referred to you. Some of our lines obviously are within code. Several of them probably are not. Of the ones that are in code and possibly have calcium buildup, is there treatment available that can treat that without having to dig up, replace
Yes, there is. There's a process called pigging of the lines, and that is rotary brush that's forced through by water pressure, and that pushes with it. It spins as it goes through the pipe. It will remove some of the deposits, and it'll flush out the end of it. So that's a process